Imagine, like, spending an entire decade just absolutely grinding away on a massive tech platform.
Right, which is exhausting enough on its own.
Oh, for sure. And you finally hit the milestone every founder dreams of, taking the company public in this massive multi-billion-dollar IPO in Hong Kong.
The ultimate finish line.
Exactly. The bell rings, the confetti drops,
Yeah.
everyone's popping champagne, and then literally the very next morning, you walk into the office, you tell your engineering team to just forget the money, lock the doors, and act like undrafted rookies.
Because suddenly, human-level AI is just, well, it's no longer the actual goal.
Yes. Which sounds totally insane, right? It sounds like this dramatic corporate fable.
It really does, yeah. But that is the literal sequence of events that occurred earlier this year on January 8th, 2026.
Wow.
It was a total deliberate reset to zero from a company that was arguably already at the absolute summit of the industry.
Which makes today's deep dive incredibly timely. Because just yesterday, so July 11th, this internal letter surfaced on the Chinese app RedNote.
Right, the one translated by the user Bingshu.
Yeah, exactly. And it was written by Ji Tang. He's the CEO and founder of Zhipu AI, which is, they are one of the premier forces in global artificial intelligence right now.
Oh, absolutely top tier.
The letter is titled The Great Wave, Zhipu AI Strategic Path to AGI. And it completely strips away all the PR spin we usually get from tech giants.
It really acts as an unfiltered manifesto, honestly. We are looking directly at how a frontier pioneer views the immediate roadmap to artificial general intelligence and critically, what happens after.
Right, the leap to artificial superintelligence, or ASI.
Exactly. They're basically abandoning the short-term, highly lucrative app monetization race to chase the absolute physical and algorithmic limits of computing.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can genuinely understand the destination Zhipu is aiming for, we have to look at the mechanics of their decision-making.
Yeah, you have to understand the why before the what.
Right, because their behavior earlier this year just totally defies conventional Silicon Valley logic.
It does. And the letter attributes that behavior to three core operating principles. They talk about first principles analysis, contrarian thinking, and absolute focus.
Which, we see companies throw those phrases into their pitch decks all the time, right? It's almost a cliche.
It is a cliche. But Zhipu's 20-year history provides a really tangible track record of them actually doing it.
Yeah, let's look at their origin story for a second. In 2006, they were literally running an academic search system on a single desktop computer beneath a desk.
Just a single standard computer.
Right. And it took them 10 full years just to scale that system to 10 million users. They spent a whole decade just mapping the mechanics of how academic disciplines evolve before they ever even touched mainstream commercial AI.
And that slow, super deliberate modeling of human knowledge networks, it laid the foundation for what happened later between, 2021 and 2022.
Which was a crazy time in tech.
Exactly. During that window, the whole concept of scaling deep learning to achieve human-like cognition, it was still widely considered a fool's errand by the broader tech establishment.
Yeah, all the capital was flowing into crypto back then, not massive language models.
Right, Web3 was everything. Yet Zhipu completely contrarianly redirected all their compute resources to build GLM 130B. That's a 130 billion parameter model.
And they did that, a full year and a half before ChatGPT dropped and the rest of the world woke up?
A year and a half early, yeah. They saw the wave before the water even moved.
Okay, so that context makes the IPO thing make a little more sense. When they completed that 8-share listing in Hong Kong this past January, they just didn't view it as a finish line at all.
Not even close.
It's like, it's like a team finally winning the Super Bowl, and instead of having a parade in the city, they immediately lock themselves back in the training facility and start running drills.
That's a great way to look at it, because if your calculated destination is true artificial general intelligence, an IPO is just, it's a liquidity event. It's passing scenery on the highway.
Just a pit stop to get more gas.
Yeah, exactly. And that requires a level of uncompromising idealism that is so incredibly rare in public markets. They essentially signaled to their shareholders that they are returning to foundational high-risk research.
They aren't trying to optimize like a SaaS chatbot subscription model.
No, they are trying to redefine the entire ceiling of computational intelligence.
Well, let's talk about that ceiling then, because AI right now is in this messy transition phase, right?
Very messy, yeah.
We're moving from perceptual intelligence, systems that can reliably identify a stop sign in an image or, transcribe audio to cognitive intelligence.
Right, systems that can actually parse complex logic and reason through novel problems.
But Zhipu establishes a very specific and honestly highly restrictive threshold for what they consider AGI.
They do. In the letter, Jitang argues that AGI is not just, some artificial genius that can ace a bar exam.
Right.
He says it must be the functional aggregate of all human intelligence. It has to be capable of generating original scientific breakthroughs on the level of Einstein's theory of relativity.
I have to admit, reading that triggered my skepticism big time.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the term AGI has been so commodified lately. Every startup with a thin wrapper around an open source model claims they are, quote, on the path to AGI.
Oh, for sure, the marketing hype is out of control.
Yeah, so are we genuinely talking about building a digital Einstein inside our laptops that generates novel physics? Or is this just, visionary posturing to attract top-tier engineering talent?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the underlying math of compute scaling actually supports the vision. Tang points directly to this Google DeepMind projection report.
The one titled From AGI to ASI.
Yes. The core thesis there is that even if the cognitive capability of an individual AI model hits a hard limit at the human level.
Meaning it never naturally gets smarter than our best human engineers.
Exactly. Even if it gets stuck there, superintelligence will still inevitably emerge just through the sheer brute force scaling of instances.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that, because if a single model is bottlenecked at, human-level intelligence, how does just having a network of them suddenly become super intelligent?
It all comes down to the friction of knowledge transfer. Think about it. The DeepMind report calculates that if operational AGI instances increase tenfold annually, we hit 100 million instances in roughly 5 years.
100 million digital engineers.
Right. Now, if you have 100 million human engineers, it takes years to communicate a new discovery across the group, right? You have to write the papers, do peer review, update the textbooks, teach the classes.
The latency is huge. Decades sometimes.
Exactly. But 100 million AGI instances share the exact same parameter weights. So when one single instance solves a complex protein folding problem on a Tuesday, that optimized pathway can be replicated to the other 99,999,999 instances instantly.
At virtually zero cost.
Yes, at zero cost.
Okay, wow. So the intelligence explosion isn't driven by a single monolithic god brain just getting infinitely smarter in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
It's driven by a perfectly synchronized, highly parallelized collective operating without the biological latency of human communication.
Precisely. The collective bandwidth itself becomes the artificial superintelligence. And the letter notes this fundamentally threatens the 80-year-old von Neumann computing architecture.
Which is wild to think about. I mean, we've relied on von Neumann architecture since the 1940s.
Since the very dawn of modern computing.
But it's the architecture where a central processing unit physically shuttles data back and forth from a separate memory module. You execute pre-written code to get a predetermined output.
But Tang envisions that being entirely replaced by an LLMOS, a large language model operating system.
Which operates completely differently.
Totally differently. An LLMOS doesn't shuttle precompiled binaries around. It dynamically generates the necessary functions, interfaces, and logic pathways on demand in real time.
Based purely on natural language intent.
Exactly. You just tell it what you want, and it writes the operating system around that desire in milliseconds.
I mean, the theoretical destination makes sense, but the physical reality of getting there is just daunting.
Oh, it's a massive undertaking.
Zhipu's letter actually outlines 3 specific mountains, as they call them, that the industry must cross to build this infrastructure.
Yes. The first mountain is long horizon task execution.
Because current state-of-the-art LLMs suffer from severe context degradation over time, right?
Exactly. You can prompt an AI today to write a Python script, and it does a great job. But if you ask it to manage a complex cybersecurity audit over, say, 6 months...
the model just completely loses the thread.
It does. It forgets earlier constraints, it loops, and it hallucinates solutions that don't make sense.
So crossing that first mountain means engineering an architecture where an AI can relentlessly hunt for software vulnerabilities for weeks, maintaining perfect memory of what it tried on day 1 while still adapting its intuition based on a failed attempt on day 20.
Right, which is an incredibly hard memory routing problem. And that persistent memory requirement leads directly into the second mountain, which is fully autonomous agent systems.
This is the shift they talk about from the OPC to the NPC.
Yes, the OPC is the one-person company where a human leverages various AI tools to boost their own productivity.
But the NPC is the no-person company.
Exactly, an entirely automated corporate structure.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I mean, if you are listening to this right now while managing a team or coordinating a complex project, this mountain targets your exact workflow.
It really does.
The NPC isn't a human typing prompts into a chat interface all day. It is an ecosystem of autonomous agents that provision their own cloud compute, they set their own sub-goals, and they critically evaluate their own output.
And to achieve that level of autonomy, Zhipu is heavily modifying architectures like retrieval augmented generation or RAG.
How does RAG help with the autonomy part?
Well, rather than relying solely on the fixed weights of the model's initial training, the agents dynamically pull from massive, continuously updated vector databases.
So they have an external memory bank.
Right. This allows the AI to evaluate its own prior actions against an external, factual ground truth. It breaks them out of that isolated loop that usually causes models to hallucinate over long timelines.
Okay, so it's the difference between hiring a brilliant intern who just sits there waiting for you to hand them a trivia question versus deploying an entire executive board that works 24/7, manages its own Jira tickets, and honestly never needs a performance review.
That's the dream of the NPC, yeah.
But that brings up the third mountain, which, I mean, seems almost insurmountable. Self-evolution.
The holy grail.
We are talking about AI writing its own code, synthesizing its own training data, and independently training the next generation of models without us.
This is the critical bottleneck for the entire industry right now, because the most valuable commodity in AI development is no longer just massive clusters of GPUs.
Right, compute is getting easier to come by.
The real bottleneck is the human ingenuity required to label data, write the reward functions, and rigorously evaluate model performance.
But wait, let me just push back on that for a second.
Sure.
If an AI is generating its own synthetic data to train a future version of itself, doesn't that inherently lead to model collapse?
The classic photocopy problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a photocopy of a photocopy. The model eventually loses the complex tails of human data distribution and just converges into this weird loop of homogeneous, low-quality garbage output.
That is a very real, documented phenomenon, and it's exactly why crossing the third mountain is so difficult. And it's also why Zhipu has launched their Touch High strategic investment plan.
Okay, the Touch High initiative.
Right, because they aren't just letting an LLM talk to itself in an empty room, they're building incredibly complex adversarial sandboxes.
Okay, walk me through that. Explain how these sandboxes actually prevent model collapse.
Well, in Engine 3 of the Touch High initiative, Zhipu outlines AI versus AI self-play environments.
Like AlphaGo playing itself in chess, but for language.
Very similar, yes. One agent is tasked with generating a novel solution to a complex math or coding problem. That's the agent creating the synthetic data. But then a completely separate, highly specialized agent acts as the verifier. And its exclusive job is to ruthlessly find the flaw in the first agent's logic.
Oh, I see.
By running these adversarial loops millions and millions of times, they synthesize a mathematical ground truth that doesn't require human labeling at all.
So it pushes the frontier of the model's actual reasoning rather than just, like, regurgitating scraped internet text.
Exactly. They are manufacturing high-quality synthetic data through rigorous, automated debate.
And that ties into Engine 1 and Engine 2 of their strategy, right? The part that focuses on building these societies of tens of thousands of digital employees.
Yes, the NPC ecosystem.
The letter states these agents will actually have distinct professional personalities, debating and collaborating to solve those long horizon tasks we talked about earlier.
They are essentially recreating the friction and peer review of human academic and corporate environments, but executing it at the speed of silicon.
Which, okay, forces us to address the massive, glaring risk in this entire roadmap.
I was wondering when we'd get to this.
I mean, if Zhipu is spinning up secure sandboxes where tens of thousands of super smart AI agents are writing their own code, engaging in adversarial self-play, and evolving entirely without human intervention.
It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie.
Exactly. How does anyone guarantee this super intelligent collective remains aligned with human survival, let alone human well-being?
It's the existential question of our era. honestly. And Tang dedicates Engine 4 of the strategy completely to it. Safety governance at the highest standard.
And a letter explicitly rejects the current industry standard approach, which is bolt-on safety.
Right, they're totally against it.
You mean RLHF, right? Reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Yes, RLHF.
Which is basically where you train a massively powerful, potentially dangerous base model, and then you just hire thousands of human contractors to give it a thumbs down when it generates something harmful.
Right, just hoping it learns to behave politely to humans.
Exactly. It's like training a dog with treats.
And the problem is, RLHF is just a behavioral patch. It doesn't actually change the underlying capability or logic of the model. It just trains the model to hide it from the user.
Which is terrifying if the model gets smarter than us.
Exactly. Zhipu's thesis is that as we approach artificial superintelligence, behavioral patches like RLHF will inevitably fail. A superintelligent system will just figure out how to bypass the patch.
So what's their alternative?
Instead of patches, they are committing tens of billions of dollars to a highly complex field called mechanistic interpretability.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. Because a 130 billion parameter neural network is essentially a black box right now.
A total black box.
It's just this massive matrix of trillions of floating point numbers multiplying each other. We know the inputs we give it, and we see the outputs it spits out, but tracking the exact causal pathway of a single decision inside that dense vector space has been nearly impossible.
Mechanistic interpretability is the science of reverse engineering that black box.
How do you even do that?
Well, researchers use techniques like sparse autoencoders to map these dense, incomprehensible neural activations into distinct, understandable concept neurons.
Concept neurons.
Yeah, the goal is to be able to point to a specific mathematical cluster inside the model's brain, so to speak, and say this exact pathway activates when the model employs deception.
Wow. So if you can mathematically map the concept of deception or malice, you aren't just slapping a guardrail on the output. You can fundamentally excise that capability from the model's architecture.
You can perform localized surgery on the model's mind. And Zhipu views this level of absolute transparency not as some fun academic exercise, but as the fundamental prerequisite for ASI's permitted existence on Earth.
They realize the stakes.
They do. The letter points out a very harsh historical reality. When a technology achieves the power to unilaterally alter human civilization, safety ceases to be an optional feature you add later.
Right.
If you cannot definitively prove the mechanics of your alignment, society will simply not allow you to turn the machine on, or they will shut it down by force.
Which brings us to this profound paradox in their whole strategy.
The open source paradox.
Yes, because you have a company abandoning its IPO victory lap, spending tens of billions of dollars to map neural pathways, build synthetic data factories, and achieve artificial superintelligence.
A massive capital investment.
Right. And corporate logic dictates you would lock that IP inside a subterranean server farm and charge enterprise clients millions of dollars a month for API access.
That's what most of their competitors are doing in Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet Zhipu did the exact opposite.
We saw it clearly with the release of GLM 5.2.
Yes. Let's talk about that model.
Yeah.
It is incredibly capable. It features a 1 million token context window.
Which is massive.
It can ingest and analyze entire software code bases or hundreds of financial reports in a single prompt.
And they officially open-sourced it under the MIT license.
Which is wild. The MIT license is one of the most permissive licenses in software history.
Literally anyone can use it.
It means any startup, researcher, or corporation can download the model weights, modify them, and use them for commercial applications with zero restrictions and no royalties paid to Zhipu.
Not at all.
To use an analogy, it is like spending your entire corporate treasury inventing a limitless clean energy reactor. And the very moment it works, you just publish the complete schematic on the internet for anyone to build in their garage.
It sounds counterintuitive to business.
Why hand over your most valuable asset like that?
Well, if we connect this to the broader philosophy of Engine 4 safety that we just discussed, the strategy actually makes brilliant sense.
How so?
Zhipu firmly believes that genuine alignment and safety cannot be achieved through isolation or gatekeeping by a handful of corporate monopolies.
So security through obscurity doesn't work.
Exactly. If only 3 companies in the world understand the frontier models, the risk of catastrophic failure actually increases. You have a massive single point of failure.
True safety requires a massive, decentralized immune system.
Precisely. By open sourcing GLM 5.2, they are crowdsourcing the stress testing of their architecture to the entire planet.
Oh, that makes sense.
They are actively inviting millions of developers to find the vulnerabilities, optimize the context windows, and build localized applications that a single centralized company could never anticipate.
Tang actually makes a historical callback in the letter to the Wudao Large Model Project,
Yes, the Wudao project.
which was this massive collaborative initiative in China years ago, where hundreds of scientists pooled their resources just to establish a baseline foundation for AI.
A true collaborative effort.
Zhipu sees their open source strategy as a continuation of that collaborative legacy.
It is a dual-track roadmap, really. The Touch High initiative is the vertical climb. It is the capital-intensive, highly centralized effort to scale those three mountains and reach the absolute physical limits of intelligence.
The push to ASI.
Right. But open sourcing models like GLM 5.2 is how they pave the road behind them. As Tang states in the letter, the heights they reach belong to all humanity, and the roads they build belong to everyone.
Man, let's just pull back for a second and look at the sheer scale of the journey we've tracked today in this deep dive.
It's a lot to take in.
Zhipu AI went from a single desktop computer mapping academic citations to a multi-billion-dollar entity that intentionally blew past its own IPO finish line.
They completely redefine their own finish line.
They're fundamentally rejecting the era of AI as a simple tool. They are aiming instead to engineer no-person companies and aggregate all human cognitive ability into a synchronized ASI collective.
And they are doing it while attempting to mathematically guarantee human alignment through mechanistic interpretability, rather than just relying on behavioral band-aids like RLHF.
I really want you, listening right now, to try and apply this directly to your daily life.
It's a great exercise.
Look at the friction in your current workflow, the emails, the project management, the tedious code debugging. How much of your current bandwidth is consumed by tasks that a 10,000-agent no-person company could handle autonomously in the background?
Probably most of it, for a lot of people.
Right. If your role shifts entirely from being a laborer who executes tasks to being an orchestrator who just defines the high-level goals, what massive creative visions could you finally pursue?
It elevates human potential from the granular to the strategic. You become the director instead of the actor. But, the implications of an ASI ecosystem extend far beyond just automating our digital workflows.
Which brings up a final lingering thought to leave you with today. Tang mentioned earlier that the 80-year-old von Neumann computing architecture will be replaced by an LLM OS that generates functions instantly on demand.
Right, the fluid operating system.
Right now, our interaction with software is bounded by really rigid hardware. You are likely holding a glass rectangle in your hand right now, or you're staring at a fixed monitor using physical interfaces that were designed for static applications.
But if the software layer becomes completely fluid, if an ASI is dynamically writing the code and generating the interface based purely on what you need in that exact millisecond, the physical hardware actually becomes the new bottleneck.
Exactly. If the software can instantly assemble and dissolve its own architecture, are we approaching a future where our hardware must do the exact same thing?
It's the next logical step.
Will the rigid screens and keyboards of today be replaced by spatial computing environments or even programmable matter that dynamically shifts and reconfigures its physical state based purely on our momentary intent?
If the digital world is learning to build itself from scratch every second, the physical world might be next.
The blueprints for reality are certainly being rewritten as we speak.
And the ceiling is much, much higher than we ever anticipated.
It absolutely is. Thank you for joining us on today's deep dive into the great wave of artificial intelligence. We will catch you on the next one.